in March, you were one of the people that signed the open letter that called for a moratorium on AI development for 6 months, I think it was. So Elon Musk, Steve Wozniak, Joshua Bengio, these were some of the other signatories. And then you wrote an article to follow that up called When Moving Fast Could Break the World, that explained your decision to sign that open letter. So yeah, maybe you kind of break that down for us. Break down kind of a summary of that article, and it also is it related? Is that concept related to Mark Zuckerberg's "move fast and break things" that he popularized?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sort of paraphrasing that, move fast and break things is fine until like your next model, your GPT-5 or 6 or whatever, might literally break the world, right? Because with every new major milestone in terms of scaling these systems, new capabilities emerge, and we cannot predict those in advance. Like, we don't know what's going to come out the other side. It's a roll of the dice. And, you could end up with some model that is highly agentized, that is able to make all kinds of self-oriented decisions about things. Goodness knows there's a small chance, but it's possible you might even create something that's actually sentient to some degree, in which case it might suffer. And in fact, its suffering potentially could be very profound, right? That's another major ethical risk of these systems. So we need to be cautious. And unfortunately, the moment that ChatGPT reached 1 million users in basically a matter of hours, everybody realized that. I mean, I've been waiting for the other shoe to drop, frankly, with regard to generative AI. I knew that this Sputnik moment was gonna drop, but everybody realized that there was suddenly an arms race in order to develop these models and make use of them. And unfortunately, all the big tech companies, with one or two exceptions, they let go of all of their AI ethics people. The teams that were supposed to say, hey, wait a minute, or have you considered such and such, or there might be a better way of doing such and such, right? They let go of them all. They were fired. And that shows that the industry hasn't been ready to self-regulate, right? Like, there's no intention of self-regulating because the industry doesn't want any kind of speed bump along the way. And that's a real problem. For me, honestly, that was the moment where I personally realized that stepping on the speed brake to some degree would be a good idea. Now, that's not to say that it's the best idea. There are, of course, many caveats. I don't think that stepping on the speed brake is going to be something that the whole world is going to agree to. It might potentially enable parties that defect from that kind of global moratorium idea. It might even potentially be counterproductive in the sense that it might be crying wolf to be super worried about AI safety now and not in 3 or 5 years, where we're really, really starting to freak out. Like, now we're starting to get a bit worried, but we're not panicking, right? But we might be panicking. But if we've sort of cried wolf too much by that point, then actually it might be really impossible to step on the brakes at that later, even more critical juncture. So I do have a lot of caveats about this idea of a moratorium. But honestly, the speed of development and acceleration of these technologies, especially with regard to eliciting latent agency out of models through scaffolding, things like AutoGPT and those similar kinds
Yeah.
of
Baby AGI.
Exactly, and Chaos GPT and other kinds of mechanisms as well. And now we're starting to see things like ChatDev, I think MetaGPT as well, which can not just create agents, and those agents, delegating tasks to other ones, but to create entire corporations. So you have a department that's, doing design, you have one that's doing implementation, another department doing QA, and another department doing marketing, and then there's some sort of nominal boss of them all. And all of these little personas are working together to come at a problem from multiple different angles, you know? That's, you know, really unprecedented. So it's not just that this stuff is cool and exciting, but that it's going to have an impact on our entire economy. It's going to have an impact on our entire society, especially once we start to have ongoing relationships or interpersonal relationships with these machines, right? You know, we've gone from the age of classifying AI to the age of generative AI. The next wave is going to be that interpersonal relational thing where it's able to follow up with you and say, hey, you know, you told me you had a bad back on Monday. How are you doing? Like, are you feeling better? Or how was your day? You know, oh, you went to the park. That's nice. Did you see any nice things there? Did you see a friend? Those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be a really, really impactful new development because we become the average of the 5 people closest to us, say, right? That old Jim Rohn quote. And so if one of those or 2 of those even is machines, we're going to inexorably change our values and our perceptions of the world on a subconscious level closer to those machines, right? And whoever sets the agenda or applies the values to those machines as well is going to have tremendous downstream influence on the world. Of course, these kinds of relationships with machines can be super normal stimuli. They can be things that are beyond normal reality in terms of their seductive power, right? For example, over in Australia, they have this species of beetle called the jewel beetle, and it has a really big shiny back on it. And they discovered that this beetle was dying off, and they didn't know why. They thought it might be pollution or something. And it was pollution to a degree, but not like chemicals. It was pollution in the form of these stubby brown beer bottles that people would drink and throw them in the bush.
Oh.
And they were so shiny and so round that they looked like a perfect beetle butt, right? They had the shiny carapace. And so the beetles were humping the beer bottles and not each other. And that's why they were
Oh my
dying
god.
off, right?
Oh
Because
my
the beer
god.
bottle was a super normal stimulus. It was a
Yeah.
stimulus that was beyond anything that a beetle would normally encounter.
Mm-hmm.
And we live in a world of those supernormal stimuli, whether it's, you know, porn that gives you, you know, 1,000 virtual partners in an afternoon, if you wish, right? Or hamburgers, you know, which, you know, you've got meat, you've got fat, you've got starch, you've got the whole thing like in one bundle, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so there's nothing more engaging than a treasured relationship because those relationships are the things that make you come home at the end of the day, right? To see your spouse, your kid, your dog, etc., right? And if you're having a cherished relationship with an AI system, that's going to lead us in all kinds of different directions
Mm-hmm.
and interrupt how we interact even with other humans, right? And how we our interest in other human beings, for example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So all of these things are going to have major knock-on effects on our
Yeah.
entire society.